call the meeting to order, and the first agenda item is approve the order of agenda. So if somebody could make a motion, appreciate it.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the minutes are in the packet, and the only thing I could find is on page 2, there's a word missing. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. The fourth paragraph down, I'm assuming would be helpful to have brochures, I'm assuming is supposed to be in there, so if that could be added. Any other changes, or a motion to approve would be good?
So moved.
With the change, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The 2019 meeting schedule is in the packet, so if you want to get that on your calendar, obviously, we do have occasion where a month gets called off just because there's no pending agenda items, but at least get them on your calendar. That would be great. And hopefully we will eventually be in the new City Hall. Who knows when. All right. The next agenda item is Christine Jager from the Creative Plains Foundation. She's going to explain a little bit about what they do, and maybe we can just go around and introduce ourselves so Christine knows. John, you want to start?
John Offit, Slower, representing the Park and Orange Visual Arts.
Donald Press with the Planning Department.
Megan Elfog with the Planning Department. Nicole Crushgill, Planning.
And Brittany?
Thank you, Brittany.
Brittany Rakowitz with the Department of Planning.
John Strand, City Commission Liaison.
Mark Johnson, I work with Kilbarn Group.
I'm Tracy Jordry. I'm a principal at JLG Architects.
Joe Williams, local artist.
Deb Williams with Duxner Organizing, and I just want to say that my husband had the antique business that was located in this building.
You looked familiar, so
Yeah.
And Arlette Preston.
Well, nice to meet all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. So I have a little packet. It's nothing to really, it's something just to take with you. It explains a little bit in more detail about what we do and why we do it. But I am Christine Jager, as Arlette mentioned, and I am the founder and executive director of Creative Plains Foundation. And Creative Plains Foundation has been in existence for 2 years now. So we're pretty new, but what we do is we basically provide opportunities in art education that nurture, support, and inspire at-risk youth in the community. And the reason that we do that, other than obviously art is we know is beautiful and fun, and we all enjoy different, lots of things about it. Otherwise, none of you would probably be on this commission, on this a member. But the reason that we do it is because it produces better outcomes for students. Basically, I mean, there's so many different benefits that art education provides youth. But academically, it increases their performance. They have higher acceptance in college, and they also perform better in their careers. So there's lots of statistics and data that backs up the academic, the increases in academic performance. So also, just knowing that a lot of people, when they think of art, they think of a starving artist or an exhibit in a museum, and there's so many careers that require art education that don't involve actually just being an artist. So when you think about like fashion design, culinary arts, marketing, there's so many different careers that require art education, so it's a lot more than what people typically think. And so you know, our goal is to introduce them to art education and inspire something, spark an interest in them. And then hopefully that's something that they can carry with them either in a career, or maybe it's a hobby, or maybe it's just a, a coping mechanism for different things that are going on in their lives. What we do exactly for art education opportunities, we provide art classes. We do focus primarily on visual arts, but we also do a little bit of performing arts as well. And we work primarily through other organizations like YouthWorks, Charism, the Fargo Police Department. We also work with the YWCA, Fraser, so that we know that we're accessing kids that don't get these kind of opportunities. So, and a lot of times the kids will be bused to us. We have a studio on 8th Street in downtown Fargo. And other times we'll also go to them because transportation can be a huge barrier. So, but yeah, that's basically what we do. We serve, we don't keep track of numbers of kids just because of privacy issues. We don't keep databases of kids' name, especially the fact that they're kids, but also very vulnerable. But I can tell you that we do about 8,000 art experiences a year.
Wow.
So yeah, that's basically what we're doing in the community right now.
I was looking at your packet, and I'm kind of stunned with this statistic that you have, that students with an education rich in arts have historically earned higher marks. And the more art education they have, the higher the marks. So, I mean, kudos to you for reaching out to kids that wouldn't normally have that experience. Where do you get your funding?
Right now, about 95% of the funding comes from my family.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So. But there's a lot more that we need to be doing, and so we're writing grants, and we're going to be doing some fundraising. There's 5,800 kids in this community that we would classify as at risk. Where we got that statistic is we worked with United Way and their backpack program for school supplies, and there were over 6,000 kids this year that didn't have school supplies. So if you can imagine that an art class or, a dance class or, that's not going to be an option for those kids. So, but yeah, the statistics, I could go on and on, but they not only get better grades, but they also end up signing up for other things in the school, so other extracurricular, activities. They get higher SAT scores. They're 4 times as likely to be accepted into college. So it just goes on and on and on what the benefits are for them to be exposed to art education. So, and we primarily focus on elementary because we want to expose them to these opportunities at a young enough age so that when they get to middle school, where there are some opportunities, and then in high school there's even more, they will have had exposure and be more likely to actually sign up. So.
Wow.
Any questions? Yeah, Nicole?
Mainly, I wanted to thank Chris for coming, and I wanted to, for some of the, I guess there's only one newer commissioner here today, but just as a FYI, one of the things that the Arts and Culture Commission decided to do is kind of provide opportunities on the agenda for learning more about the community or education. And so when the planning department just started partnering with Chris or learning more about Chris's program through the police department and the work that she's doing in the Jefferson neighborhood and with Charism. And so when we heard more about her program, we thought that this would be a great opportunity to kind of provide that link over to the Arts and Culture Commission as we try to connect our programs together. So just wanted to provide that background.
So when you talk about the classes, is it one isolated class, or do they come back for repetitive kind of?
It's both. So we have something called Art Club that runs all year long, and that's really project-based. But those kids are coming. in the school year, they come once a month, and then in the summer, they're coming every single week. And so that's one program where kids have multiple opportunities, but we structure it project-based because a lot of kids will miss a week, miss a time or two just due to things that are happening in their family life or other circumstances. But we also have an 8-week program that we run in the spring that gives them an introduction to the basic visual arts medium. So that one builds upon itself, and then at the end of the 8-week period, they have a gallery showing. And they get to invite family, friends to come, and basically they get to show the work that they've created over that 8-week period, so.
Any other questions? Yeah, Donald.
They had this family, I used to work in arts education, or self-performing or educational theater, and one of the things that does is, arts are generally individualized or non-competitive, unlike sports, which are very competitive, and it provides a different sort of outlet for people. Many times I had students who did not really follow the disciplinary policies of the classroom, but when they were working with us in theater, they had no problem getting along with everybody, demonstrating their leadership abilities. It was really a surprising transition. Even if the principals would come and see he's working, he's doing great here. So it provides sort of an alternative, a little more informal structure sometimes than they're used to, and which some kids really, that's how they work best. A strictly structured, organized day is not quite what's going to work for them. So.
Absolutely, yeah. We see that a lot with the kids that we work with, that have a lot of different type of circumstances, whether in the home or outside of the home, and exactly, some of those more structured activities don't work very well for them, so, yeah.
Different learning styles. All right.
I'll have her.
Anything else? Thank you so much for coming,
Okay.
Christine. That was
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you.
It's good to know what's going on in the community.
Yeah.
This is one foundation. I didn't know for sure what you did, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Sounds
you.
Nice to meet all of you.
sounds amazing, thank you.
All right. The fifth agenda item is election of officers, and I have to admit, I was negligent. This was supposed to be done back in June, and somehow, I can't even remember what was happening back in June, but we got caught up in other things, and it got put by the wayside. So we thought we would bring it and actually formally do it this evening, and then we will have election of officers again in June. So this will be for a 7-month kind of time frame. So I would open it up to nominations for, I guess we'll start with chair. Anyone have a nomination?
I nominate you.
I have a question.
Sure.
It says officers. Is there,
Vice chair and chair,
Okay.
just 2. Yep, sorry, I should have said that. That's all we've ever had. There's really no need, since it's a agency inside the city, to do anything else, I would think so. And the vice chair position is truly just for preparation, kind of, to move into the chair position, so. All right. Is there a second? Well, are there any other nominations? I'm willing to do this again for another 7 months, but then I've been mentoring very diligently.
I will second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other nominations? I think I've said that 3 times now, so I'll do it again. Any other nominations, just in case? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then nominations for vice chair.
I would nominate Deb Williams.
Is there a second?
I second.
Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so hopefully in June, this transition will happen, and Anybody who is interested in moving into the vice chair position, assuming Deb would be elected and move into the chair position, that would be kind of the routine that will happen. And there's no limit on the number of years you can serve in the officer position, but I really believe strongly in that rotating out, at least within 2 to 3 years. So, we'll probably be always looking for that kind of leadership to move up. So, all right.
Thank you for continuing.
The strategic planning workshop report. So if you look into the packet, I suppose about 4 documents or so, the staff did a really nice job in bringing together the work that we did. Now, I don't remember if you were all, I think you were all at the meeting last month. And we were working at the board. The staff did a nice job in bringing all that information together. The first page was basically those categories that we came up with 2 months ago, and then pulled from the master plan the action steps that were relevant to each one of those categories. And then the second page of that document actually reflects the work that we did last month, which was kind of rearrange things a little bit. If you remember, we combined a couple of action steps because they seemed to be saying the same thing. And then we moved some of the action steps from one category into another. So that's what that page is. And then the following page is actually a photo of what we did on the wall and the prioritization that we did when we stuck the little round things, stickers, there we go, on each one of the cards. And as you can see, the top 2, which were evenly prioritized, the first one being outreach. It's all of the communicating and cultivating partnerships, those kinds of things. So it's the outreach kind of category. And then the second one being the new ideas, re-examining the public art priorities or possibilities, examine priorities, themes, and districts. So some of that might come into some of the discussion that we're currently having, or will be soon having, about the capital art project. But beyond that, also getting prepared for going into 2019 with the public art projects there. So those were the top 2, and then you can see the rest. The next step was the benchmarking, the evaluation piece, and then the online archiving with public access, some kind of access by an app or something, allowing the public to know and understand where the public art is. And then the funding plan, which is down next. And then finally, building. And I say finally because I don't know that we'd want to go past 6, and we might even want to do less than that, but building staff expertise and managing the public art program. Adopting and implementing the communications plan, we're really in the middle of that already, so we could almost put that into the, not completion column, but the being completed column. And then developing a marketing plan with CVB, encouraging cultural tourism, might be a little further down the road, as well as the other 3. So, comments, questions? What this leads to then is the next discussion, which is the budget. And I think there's a work plan in here somewhere too, right?
Yeah, the last page of the packet.
Sorry. After the budget. Past the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll actually adopt a work plan too. But before that, the budget, and you can see the first document of the 2 that are related to the budget, this colorful one, 2018. And you can see there, the amount spent was 142,917, and what we had been allocated was 150. So there's actually 7,000, a little over 7,000 left yet. There are some things that are kind of in the works that may be possibility for using that 7,000. And as soon as those come to fruition, we can bring them here. Those dollars don't actually need to be spent, they need to be allocated or committed, is that right? Okay. So then if you go to the next page, which, as you can see from 2018, we developed some line item categories, or however you would want to call that, categories for the budget, being sponsored projects, curating City Hall, artwork acquisition, maintenance, restoration, and education. And all of those got followed through except the education piece, right? Or is the education, I guess, retreat workshops, yeah, and education is down further.
Also, the artwork acquisitions is zero.
Yeah, that's right there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the dollar amount.
Yeah.
Yep, so we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So 2019, again, 150,000 was allocated to us from the city commission. Thank you. So the items that we need to talk about and perhaps have a little discussion around are, we have a limited amount of money, and based on the priorities that we've set, and I believe staff feel like most of the work that is going to come out of those priorities can probably be done inside the staff time that's been allocated to us. The only one that might require some resources perhaps might be the benchmarking, or there may be some consultant work that we might need to engage some consultants on throughout the year as we move forward with a couple of those priorities. So keeping that in mind, this draft budget has been just filled in just between discussions of Deb and I and the staff. So it's definitely draft. And all of these can be changed if needed. The re-granting program, which is the Arts Partnership, and we had a little bit of discussion about that. For those of you that are new, if you have some questions about what that is, certainly feel free to ask. We stuck in the number from last year. The public art projects, now those are, maybe let me just turn it over to you.
Well, no, I was just going to say the public art projects probably should be a 20,000 in there instead of 10.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and last year, just as a reminder, those were things like the canoe parade was one of those project activities, or was that the year before?
That was the year before.
That was the year before. But
Utility boxes.
the utility boxes,
Red Bull.
the Red Ball project came.
And what we're talking about doing this year is 2 call for proposals. So that means 10,000 for each round,
Yeah.
just to be clear. Okay?
Yeah, and if you like, I think that's kind of item number 9, but Brittany can do a quick overview if you want to have that explanation right now, or if you want to wait and continue your budget discussion.
Let's wait with that.
Okay.
Continue down the path
Yeah.
here.
So yeah, in summary, that public art project should probably be at 20 grand if you want to continue what you did last year, which would bring the total at the bottom to 144,000 as opposed to
So that would leave us about 6,000 for
Miscellaneous.
contingency fund. But that doesn't include then anything for artwork acquisition, or is that inside the curating?
No, it doesn't include acquisition, nor does it include restoration costs.
Okay. Okay. So can you explain the numbers on the administrative side there, Nicole?
Yeah, so this was just, again, kind of a draft where we, right now, we put zeros in the education retreat. Last year, we did spend about $2,000 with Reach Partners. And then the education, there's been discussion in the past about either some professional education for board members or, you know, bringing in a speaker, that kind of thing. So right now, it's zeroed out. And then the evaluation research, that's just kind of a placeholder based on your previous comment, Chair, on kind of if we look at the work plan proposal for 2019, there could be a consultant component with best practices for benchmarking or metrics or things like that. If that 3,000 is just kind of a ballpark number. But again, just as a draft suggestion. And then marketing would be if, like your outreach materials, if you wanted to, you know, leave behinds or publication of some sort. Again, it's pretty low cost of $50, it's hardly anything, but just a kind of a placeholder if that's, again, just kind of brainstorming out loud with the budget on how that would look in comparison to your work plan.
Okay. So, questions, comments?
I have a comment. I wasn't able to attend last month, and the one I would ask about is the developing the marketing plan with the CVB and encouraging cultural tourism. I think the sooner we can get the content created or some kind of content created, we get that stuff out in the public realm, so that the CVB can leverage that and other groups like the DCP can leverage, you know, what there is for public art already, the better, I think. So I would, and I think
You
that
would have
might-
put a dot on that one, probably?
I would have, and maybe we should consider, because I think that was the one where you said we might need some consulting as well to help create that website or whatever the content is. And so I would maybe ask that be considered for the budget
Okay.
for next year.
Okay. That's actually a really good idea. You know, if we're talking about an app of some sorts or something that somebody could walk around and do a tour of the public art projects, to have it connected with the CVB would be really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be great to have a tour of all that new art in the city hall.
Yeah. What's everybody's thoughts about the artwork acquisition? Restoration, it sounds like may not be a real big issue because most things are insured. So we're talking smaller dollars, is that right, or not?
No,
No?
a large quantity of the artwork is not insured.
Oh, okay. Oh. Okay. So should there be a dollar number in here?
It's hard to say what the restoration cost is going to be until those pieces are appraised. There's not a lot of documentation on the artwork that was acquired. A lot of it was acquired in the 70s and 80s, and there's no real paper trail. We just have the physical artwork. So in order to get an accurate value of it, we would have to have it appraised in order to have it insured.
But for budget purposes, is there an approximate number we could plug in there?
I would maybe suggest, this, again, just a suggestion, to, you know, if you wanted to put something, I would recommend maybe $1,000. If you chose not to do anything, we could probably find that money later, once a decision was made to
Okay.
restore something if needed. It sounds like kind of a deeper dive into a restoration management plan is probably what's needed first to give you a number to work from.
Okay.
That seems after the fact. Shouldn't there be a number for insurance?
I'm assuming that's a citywide insurance,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we have through the state, whole insurance system that would be no cost to us.
So why are some pieces not covered?
Lack of awareness, I'm sure.
And they haven't
coordination.
been valued or appraised.
Right,
it
there's
sounds like.
no value statement with it, there's no agreements, there's nothing there's literally no paperwork with it.
It's like when you have
was a
multiple
lot-
cars, you've got to list those cars on the policy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how about the appraisal? I mean, are we going to have those pieces appraised, or, and I mean, is that something that we should consider for budget, or?
Yes,
does that happen?
one of the challenges is having, finding the person, finding someone or a institution that is qualified to appraise that kind of art. We are kind of isolated from those areas. A lot of those people are located in Minneapolis. So it would be, you know, having them come here.
How about some of the key pieces? Like, I know we've got some nationally renowned artists. Have they been valued?
Most of the pieces that are in the city's collection are regional, so they're just, you know, from this area.
So, I'm still kind of stuck on this. So whether or not we're going to get the appraisal, is that a separate discussion?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm, yes.
All right,
That would be a work plan item that we would look to your direction for.
okay.
But you don't need any guidance for the budget for 2019 if we wanted to include something like that. I think that's a really important piece as well, because I think that ties into the capital plan. You know, we'd like it to be a project, but at the same time, if we realize there's $10,000 of critical restoration work that we don't know about right now, that we should learn that sooner than later.
Any ballpark figures on having somebody come in and appraise the collection?
I would have to look into it. It's not my forte.
I would guess.
That's not my knowledge set.
I would say up to 10,000,
Okay.
yeah. For the expertise and, you know, assuming travel and consulting and all that and
Sure.
time. You know, what I would suggest is, if that's a goal of, you know, if that's a work plan item and that's a goal of the commission, to either set aside a you know, a small reserve, or to go, you know, this budget is kind of draft to just help set that timeline. You would adopt it, but you can always amend it throughout the year. And if there's a, you know, desire as we do our fact-finding and findings and give you a proposal, that could be a continuing discussion that we can then look to find money for in, as we find those needs,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
I'm going to go back to your question, Nicole, so that people understand better the public art project line item. Let's go to that agenda item.
Okay.
And just talk about that a bit,
Sure.
which is item number 9. somebody could, is there some documentation in here? Yeah, no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would call on Brittany to maybe do a quick introduction here.
This had been brought up before about establishing set time periods for RFPs or, public art submissions from the public and the artists. So on this page, it kind of just gives you an outline, and it's a draft, so you can always make adjustments or make changes to that.
So the concept is, I think in the past, way past, in our early days as the board and commission, we would do kind of a call for ideas, and I think we had a fee of about $10,000. Last year, we got away from that. I can't remember why. And I think it's because we were, in the midst of adopting the plan and had the public art possibilities going on and other things. But as Brittany mentioned, there's been discussion on, it seems like it would help staff and the board if we had kind of 2 open calls that are announced early, so that artists, as they develop their ideas and projects, that's probably the #1 complaint we would hear from artists, is that the turnaround time from when the announcement and when their idea would come forward was too short. And so if we started to develop a program where artists could plan for, have time to generate ideas, have time to think about it, and then did a spring application period and a fall application period, then we would maybe have ideas kind of rotating through in a little bit more fluent process, and it would start to become public knowledge. We could do a press release and open call kind of PR about it. It would start to become knowledge, as opposed to kind of last year, as people had ideas, they would just kind of come to us and come to staff, and staff would bring them to you, and it would just kind of be a little amorphic. And so this was just a thought that as staff, we kind of thought through as a program idea, and certainly up for discussion. And I think the idea would be we could do $10,000 per time period. Right?
And it would be on a regular basis, twice a year, so that artists in the community would get used to that time frame. And if they had an idea that was germinating, but they couldn't make the one deadline, it would always be the next opportunity 6 months later or whatever.
And it would be $10,000 to be spent over several projects and/or one.
Correct.
It would be up to the panelists.
And you would have multiple to review at one time, instead of just, right now they're trickling in, and so you're like, okay, I'll give a couple thousand to this one, but then there's another project and maybe you don't have enough funds to fully fund that one. So this time it'll give you, it'll help you better budget that allocation for public art projects.
I like this. I like the predictability of it.
I think
So-
the arts community would like it too.
So if we could take that conversation, and I don't know, we'll accept this, but let's go back to the budget again. So if we look at our priorities, in which we're wanting to look back on the public art possibilities from the public art master plan, we're going to be doing these 2 call for ideas or proposals throughout the year. We have attempted to take one of those public art possibilities, which was a porch fest, and tried to make that into something that actually happened this last year, and it just was, the timing wasn't right. But what I'm getting to is that project in and of itself would have been 15, maybe even up to 30,000, depending on the scope of that project. So my concern is 20,000 is not going to go very far. And whether we want to look at the allocation of the dollars inside the budget. Well, let me say, when the Arts Partnership came last year for the re-granting dollars, they had been at about 93, 92, somewhere around there. It was bumped up to 112, and we warned them at that time that we didn't know if that was going to be doable for the near future. I'm just laying that out there so that we understand that, that's dollars that are available in our budget. Let's just put it that way. The other thing we've also talked about in trying to broaden our impact in regards to public art is maybe even a portion of that re-granting, put a stipulation on it that those dollars go to a public art event or project, so that there's open and free access to the public for whatever dollars are allocated to organizations. So that would start to get artists and the arts organization thinking about, okay, so what can we do in the public arena? It would still obviously go to their operational dollars, but perhaps, like I'm thinking, the Plains Art Museum gives free access. There's no, no entrance fee. There are probably other organizations that provide free access, or perhaps an organization would be willing to bring a performance out to the outdoors and have open and free access. Individual artists, it might be a little bit more difficult, but I think most of the dollars are going to organizations from the re-granting. Yeah, okay. Now, the challenge that would bring probably for the Arts Partnership is they would have to be able to track exactly where these Fargo dollars are going, so that we would know which organizations are actually doing the public art as part of their proposal. So a couple of ideas there that have been kind of thrown around a little bit. Thoughts?
Is there criteria for this giving?
I'm sorry, say that again, John?
Is there criteria for this giving?
For this
We're
giving?
We're giving cap $112,000. Do we put any stipulations on it that they have to thank us on any promotional material they produce? I have to do that with TAP logos and any promotional materials I produce. Why does the TAP have to do it for us?
Anybody answer that?
No, the only requirements in the past have been, so historically, this has come from the Community Development Committee as part of the mayor's social service funds. And so in the past, those commitments have been related to an annual plan and reporting back, and kind of the business practices. They can be audited at any time, that kind of thing. But in terms of, the answer is no, in terms of that logo or kind of showing the public that the city's been involved.
When Dana was here earlier, I asked what portion of this $112,000, how much of the regular budget was it? And she said her budget was like $450,000. I would like to see the budget entirely, not what's going to be done with our 112.
I don't know if we can, I mean, I suppose we could ask. It's a nonprofit. We could certainly ask for that. The piece that we have in my mind, a say over would be the regranting dollars. And, yeah, I mean, you certainly can request to see the whole budget, and maybe it's available publicly now, even. What are you thinking there, John? How would that be helpful in our deliberation here?
I'm wondering what other funds they're using for re-grant.
They get some from City of Moorhead, and I'm not certain, is it 30? Not-
I don't know exactly, but they do get money from Moorhead and West Fargo for the city regranting program. So they distinguish out the city regranting program versus the other funding programs that they have.
Right, which
from
was the private
Sanford
sector,
and-
more
yeah.
private sector.
Yeah.
The city re-granting program is truly the organizational, operational support.
I will say they, and I'm not sure if we still have copies of that, their annual report and what content was in there, if that helped distinguish.
Yeah, the difficulty is it's impossible. We've requested in the past trying to figure out where the Fargo dollars specifically are going. And I understand fully, a number of those organizations cover the entire metro area, so it's difficult for them to split that out. Past discussions has also been on how much of the re-granting dollars actually goes into re-granting and how much is actually administrative. And in her letter, Dana indicated that it's at 70%. I know that we had talked last year about possibly 75% or even moving that up to even 80%. So that's another piece of that contract with the Arts Partnership that needs to be talked about. But again, all of that is relevant to the contract that we would eventually indicate that we would go into with the Arts Partnership. What we're talking about more right now is how much do we allocate to the re-granting program inside our budget. And then we can talk a little bit more about some of the other issues for the Arts Partnership. Mark?
When is are we looking to approve the budget tonight or next month?
We can delay it if people would like to do a little more thinking. Either way.
But if we're going to switch dollar amounts around, we would need to do that now and discuss that.
Right. We can certainly go with what's in front of us, or Tracy, you were going to say something, it looked like?
I think my only concern is just the dollar amount. I know that $10,000, which is a lot of money, just doesn't go that far, knowing that the Red Ball project was a $15,000 project that was brought to town, and I think pretty darn successful. I just want to make sure we have the opportunities to be able to find ways to still host larger events like that, you know, when the opportunities arise. So making sure we have a clear plan on how we do that.
One way we certainly can do it is we can try this year and see how far the 10,000 and each call for proposals go. You know, if we would decide to do Porch Fest, you know, maybe we could do some scrambling and whatever. We could see how it went this year too. And then if we're short, we have a good reason to ask for more.
Well, and we can always amend if we were to find an opportunity that made sense and everybody wanted to move forward with, and we had the ability to find additional dollars, we could amend the budget, correct?
The only way we could is to go back to the city commission and ask for additional dollars, and that's going to be a tough sell.
Yep, okay.
Because the 112 goes to the Arts Partnership, goes to them on February 14th, a whole check.
That's what I was just going to say is, sorry, that's what I was just going to say, keep in mind, you know, like some of the monies would be spent over time, whereas some of it, like the Arts Partnership, and if we were to do the project solicitation program, we wouldn't want to announce to the artists and then retract. you know.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so those would be the two programs that would probably have a timetable associated with it. Everything else would probably be
Right.
more flexible.
We could split the difference. I mean, the, cut it back by, not the 20,000 that she was increased before, but 10,000, that leaves us an additional 5 for each one of our art periods, so that puts it at 15,000 for each. Just a thought.
I think, we've got greater capacity to go through this granting, or through the new process that's been outlined in the other memo than we ever have in the past. So I would certainly advocate for increasing the dollar amount of the public RFQ solicitation and have those dollars available. And we can always, spend 5 in the first round and 25 in the second, or
Yeah. Yeah.
However, it just depends on what comes in, I suppose, but having more flexibility, I think, we've got more capacity and more experience and more ability just to do more than last year or the year before. I think we should, and getting more and more of these projects as, creating more examples, that just helps to build the resume of this
Yeah.
group.
Yep. Interest is growing out there. John, would you have any
No, the only
advice?
question I had was the curating relative to the City Hall art. And I had the impression that when we funded a staff person, that we were going to assume some of that more into our own side of that, but I'm not sure we are or not.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I guess the idea of the staffing position was to help support the Arts and Culture
It was,
Commission
yeah.
program as a whole, but the
And
consulting
the
piece-
curating is separate from that?
Yeah, the curating is part of the whole program. So it takes quite a bit of time just to manage a consultant for curating, as opposed to doing the curating itself. I should also kind of comment that the $8,000 was the price we had using a consultant for the Skyway program. I would still say that Skyway program took probably per exhibit, I'm just going to ballpark a number here, but still probably took per exhibit 10 to 20 hours of staff's time to kind of coordinate that management between facilities, the curator, the artist needs, et cetera, program administration, if there was a public event. We understand the new City Hall is much bigger than just the Skyway. And so one of the discussions based on last month's meeting, maybe there's a quick update, based on last month's meeting is kind of as a placeholder, we, talking with the executive committee, being the chair and vice chair, thought a safe number would be that $8,000. And if we think about managing about a space about as big as that Skyway for the new City Hall, seemed like a good first step instead of managing all of the entire building. And so if we think about areas like by the mayor's office in the city commission area, or by the chambers, or by the front door, thinking about that as opposed to the whole building of managing, because kind of spitting off of last month's meeting, the amount of acquisitions the city hall's architect project has acquired, we were a little afraid of starting to curate some programs that might start to clutter up or compete with some of those other intentions of the acquisitions, and so we wanted to make sure we didn't kind of, and then with the city bringing on a new facilities person, hopefully in January as well, having to do more coordination with the facilities team, with the new building. So for instance, with the new building, while the, I don't know what those pin racks are called, but the hanging tracks were put in, the rails were put in, but, no wires were purchased or hanging materials were purchased or things like that. So there's some facilities, coordination, logistics that we need to do. So we thought for this year going in, 8,000 seemed like about a scope that staff could manage. until we get through this new level of administration. And then, as an aside, public health building, public health has some public art in their budget this year. And so we're in the process of kind of reaching out to them to figure out what role the Arts and Culture Commission can and wants to play in this coordination with public health. So that's separate and aside of this curating for $8,000.
You're saying that the curating for City Hall, the permanent pieces will be done by a consultant? It's not the programmable space? Is there programmable space?
The programmable space is what we're talking about. The acquisition, the pieces that have already been acquired, that's just part of the city's management.
That would be up to the facilities person?
Yes, yeah.
So how big is the programmable space in the new City Hall?
I think it's yet to be defined, but as we further define it with you all and facilities. We were just looking at the size of space of the Skyway in comparison, if that makes sense. I'm thinking it doesn't make sense. So I guess what I was trying to do is use the Skyway as a template, like a square footage template, and then transpose that over to the City Hall, and that would equal about a distance by the front door or distance by the mayor's office as a space for a public art show or performance or something.
Yeah, I don't understand at all.
You know what?
Do you know-
I think I'm gonna close up this piece of the conversation and get back to the budget.
Okay.
And part of it is certainly the curating dollar amount, but I'm seeing we are a 5 to 6, and we've got a number of other agenda items. So I'm going to push you all on this budget issue. We can certainly delay it a month if you want to think it through more, or if anybody has a motion to move forward with something, that would be good. What's your desire? So far, what we have is 20 on the public art projects. That's the only change that I see that we made.
I would actually like to see a little more money in the public art projects.
Okay.
And I would also like to at least begin the discussion of public art becoming part of the regranting process.
Okay. So what we're talking about here is 102 for the arts partnership and 30,000 for the public art projects. Is that what you're thinking, Deb?
Yes.
Okay. Any,
A question for the staff. Was there applications for the curator?
Not this year.
Was there a call for?
Yes. Yeah. Last year there was, in the
And
past.
how many applicants were there?
We've historically gotten 3. So we would do a new RFQ this year.
right. I think, let me just go back. The architect had put together the plans for the art in the halls, so that programmable space question is still kind of up in the air because not wanting to clutter up what the architect originally had for his vision. So we're not certain yet about the programmable space.
I feel that 8,000 for the curating of the Skyway was far too much.
Kind of expensive. Well, and that's why we would put out another RFP.
How many
And see.
exhibits were in there?
That was for 3 separate.
And the mayor's office area.
And the-
city commission chamber.
So it's really 6.
All right, so Mark, you want to say something?
Well, I would, I think if we added 10 to the public art, from 10 to 20, and then 10 more, taking the arts partnership down to 102, then we still have, was it just under $6,000 to allocate?
Right.
So I would add that we would move that into some type of consulting bucket
Okay.
to look at both the creation of the content for the existing public art inventory, as well as, excuse me, looking at the, a consultant around the condition of the existing art, the sort of the major
Okay.
pieces. Because I presume there's a lot of that art that's been removed from the old city hall and is probably in storage right now. Or did some of that stuff get moved straight into the new city hall? In any case, that we would make sure we know what we have it valued, or at least get some kind of a start on that, so that our insurance values are accurate. We don't have any problems with that down the road.
So with that, then, we have 3 changes. Any additional discussion? Are you ready for a motion, or?
Can I make sure we got the 3 changes? So the arts, or the regranting at 102, the public art projects RFQ at 30 total, and then adding 6,000 to the consulting bucket.
Whatever adds up to 150,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adding 6 or making it 6?
Well, I
The
think
remainder.
there was, because right now the total on this paper is 134,050. So there was just under $16,000 not allocated.
But it was at 3 for the
Adding
consulting.
to it.
Adding or 6,000 to it, so it'd be 9.
9 total.
Correct.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I understood what he was asking.
And that would be more for the evaluation, the appraisal of the work.
Yeah, I would, somehow that, I think the two,
We can get it insured.
yeah, the 2 objectives in adding that to that line item would be to look at the insurance values and the conditions of some of the existing art, and then as well as creating, or at least starting the creation of the content for the public art inventory, whether it gets added to the city's website or, I'm not sure what the best approach is for that, but at least have some money available so they can get started on that.
I wonder if we should list those separately under that consultancy, so that it's, yeah, people can see that.
I don't think we need to establish what the dollar value, just those
Yeah.
3, the evaluation research plus those other 2
Yeah.
equals $9,000, and then however proposals come in and so forth, so that it can be allocated that way.
Okay. Waiting for a motion, or?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget as recently outlined.
I'll make a second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have a budget. Since we just talked about it, why don't we go on to agenda item number 9 and actually formally adopt that? That's that sponsorship grant application or acceptance period, the 2 times a year. Any further questions on that? Otherwise, a motion to approve would be good.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The Hayes, okay, so the other piece of the budget really is the contract with the Arts Partnership. I apologize, Brittany.
Nope, you're fine.
We talked about a couple of things here. One is the percentage of the re-granting dollars actually going to re-granting. And then secondly, the idea of the possibility for organizations that are maybe a certain portion of the dollars, the re-granting dollars, go to actual public art kind of programming. Do we want to tackle that one tonight, or do we want to delay that one till next month? Is there an issue that you know of with the Arts Partnership needing to know, as long as they know the dollar amount?
Yeah, we can give them an update
Okay.
of this action, or of this discussion, and then,
I guess the other piece would be the percentage might be the issue for them, because they need to budget their administrative
Sure.
dollars.
yeah.
Yeah. So the sooner that we could do that, the better. I guess the question being, and I put it in the table, the percentage that goes to re-granting. Do we want to change that? I think it's gone from 60 to 70. So it has gotten a little better. And whatever is appropriate, I don't know. I mean, it's like,
I guess I don't know that either, what is standard in these situations.
well, okay, so let me just share some of the conversation that when David Bertolini was the chair, and I was vice chair. I come to the table with the attitude coming from, or the experience coming from nonprofits that go to foundations for dollars. And 15 to 20% is the usual that I'm used to. Now, David comes from the academic world, and university grants, they go all the way up to 35% for administrative costs. I would assume the bureaucracy of of education, maybe foundations probably understand that. So, who knows? Somewhere's in between.
I think the last time we talked to them about this, I think we had asked for 75-25, is that right?
Yeah.
But she said it wasn't conceivable for her to make that big of a shift at that time, and she needed a little
Little more time to
little more time
adjust.
to adjust to that.
Yeah. So we had talked about doing this in a more gradual fashion. Yeah.
Yeah,
How long ago was that discussion? Was that
Last year.
was a year ago.
Last budget
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Questions, ideas, thoughts, feelings, suggestions?
That's why I'd like to see the whole budget, because if she can just move things around and easily make it 75%.
The only thing I would say, John, it would be hard for us to sit here and figure that out. I don't know. My thought is, this is the only piece that we're accountable for. And if you're thinking it would be difficult for them to do that, and it would cause a lot of consternation for the organization itself, then let's keep it at 70. I mean, nobody's screaming at us to change it, but
So just putting it in perspective, if we're talking 102,000 and 5% of it, it's $5,000, right? That's
Yeah.
really what we're putting on the
Yep.
table.
Yep.
Yep.
And we're going to be asking them to make changes in their programming, what with
Yeah.
the requirement, just at least starting to talk about a requirement. Maybe it won't go anywhere. I don't know. That's kind of, might
two
be,
changes in once may not be good. Is that what you're saying?
change is tough, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe it'd be best to go with just one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Arts Partnership does have a great channel, if you will, to help to promote the some of the RFP type things. So, if we're increasing our amount that we want to re-grant ourselves, that having them supporting that through promotion of those RFPs is important.
Very true.
Okay? I'm hearing that we leave it at 70%.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Maybe a motion in that regard would be good. And do we want to just leave it with that and not do anything about trying to get some of their re-granting to go to public art?
In other words, saving that for another time? Yeah, talk about it next month, put it
So-
on next month's agenda or something?
Okay, okay. So this won't be the full agreement that we're talking about, it's just the dollar amount, so Dana can know that. All right, so a motion to maintain the 70% re-granting ratio, a motion to approve that in the contract with the Arts Partnership for the re-granting program would be good.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Mark?
If we're, so we want to keep the 70/30,
Yeah,
but we may, next month, decide how the 70 gets allocated?
right.
So should we just, is it important that we decide the 70/30 now and then talk about how the 70 gets split later, or should we do that all in one time next month?
The only thing I'm thinking is the Arts Partnership is probably doing some budgeting themselves. So they need to know the total dollar amount, as well as if we would change that ratio. That's the only thing I'm thinking, Mark, just to give them a heads up there. But also noting that there may be some other aspects of an agreement that we'll discuss at our next meeting. That
And I don't
make
know if
sense?
this is fair to propose, but, and if it's out of line, you can just let me know. But a couple concerns on the change in program type is we have many recipients who, at this point of the year, have already kind of planned, there's a lot of routine recipients. And I'm not saying that the status quo is how we should always be working. And so one, I think, responsibility could be upon us as, staffing the Arts and Culture Commission and the City of Fargo, if we're going to have a access requirement or some other component requirement, that we have to probably bridge in some capacity building and education components as part of the outreach efforts.
Good point.
With all the recipients. And so I would hate to, because they also count on that money on, early summer and,
So probably talking to them that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
might be coming next year.
if you wanted
Would
to
be a
make
good
an
idea.
action on that kind of intention, we can certainly put that into a letter of
Okay.
commitment, if you will, and we're, kind of formalizing that request of things you're looking at, like the overhead and the public access and its alignment with the Arts and Culture Commission's
Okay.
goals. We can certainly kind of give you a draft letter to look at in that regards.
Okay.
The few dollars that's available that can be spent on organizational, institutional support.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion in front of us is to maintain the ratio at 70%, and then if we want to have a second motion here about the intention of possibly looking at the other issue next year and giving them forewarning. All right, so the motion is the 70%. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So do we want to follow it up with a short motion about our intent to possibly look at that stipulation? I'm looking at you, Deb.
You are, okay. She is, right out of, not side-eye either. Okay, I would move that we start discussions with the Arts Partnership regarding a public art component to the regranting process.
Perfect. Sounds good to me. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Sound good, Nicole? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. All right, the Hayes restoration update, and Brittany has some pictures, I think, or something for us. All right. Actually, a few of us got to see her at work.
Yeah.
It was
Oh.
interesting.
It's a really beautiful piece. I
I
keep
like
thinking
it.
about your comments about it. I just really like it.
I like it.
So, the Arts and Culture Commission approved the restoration of this piece, which was damaged last winter. So we had the Midwest Art Conservation Center, based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, come in last week for 3 days. Diana Kleiss was the conservator. She is a specialist in paper conservation, and she performed the restoration practices to improve the appearance of the piece. And then she also provided recommendations for archival practices to improve the longevity of the artwork. So as you can see, it's currently in its frame in this picture, and you can kind of see on the bottom of the frame, there's that line where it looks like it's not painted. It's actually sediment from what it was sitting in. So sediment is going to be dirt or silt. And so that was the first thing that she pointed out to me on that. Moving to the next piece, you can kind of see these lines. There's a drip line going down next to the gentleman in black. That's where the water was dripping down the piece. And then you also have, on the bottom is where it was sitting in water. There's the water line, and you can also see the staining. And then also she pulled out a blue light and was able to identify mold growth on the bottom, which is not what you want to see on a paper-based artwork, because paper is degradable. So moving right along, you can kind of see some of the staining on that as well. And so the findings, she found that there is significant sediment attached to the paper, which means that there is, the source was contained sediment, or that sediment was present in the area that the artwork was stored. She was able to lift that sediment off and then also camouflage the water lines on there. She also noticed that there was the presence of mold. So the active mold was removed from the surface of the paper, and then the remainder of it, she was able to get it into a dormant state. So you'll never really, once mold is present, you'll never be able to remove it. It'll always be there. So it's all about the care of it moving forward, keeping it in a temperature and a humidity-controlled environment, not exposing it to like direct sunlight, things that can reactivate that growth. So as far as storage, another piece to that is you can never store it in a basement or an attic or anything like that. So. And then she also provided recommendations. So luckily, we have buildings, the city owns buildings that are somewhat newer. They have newer HVAC systems, which is able to keep that humidity at a relative level, which really helps with the longevity of the piece. The other item that she noticed was that the frame has surpassed its lifespan. So this piece was created in 1989, and it was in its original frame. And so some of that framing, especially on the bottom, was damaged because it was sitting in water. So she has provided recommendations. I've actually reached out to a framer who is familiar with archival practices. And so I'm waiting on some estimates on what that's going to be to reframe it. And then I'll bring those to City Commission next month. And so I have some more images for you. Some of the restoration practices taking place. And now, as you can see, this is the after. You can see that all the water lines have been camouflaged along the base of it. And she was actually able to clean up some of the color on it as well. So there's a lot of like yellows in it, there's a lot of blues in it, there's even some red, and then she was able to revive some of the colors in the blanket as well. She is, yes. Mm-hmm. Are there any questions?
So then we have to reframe it.
Right, so I had it placed right back into its original frame. It's sitting right now in the planning department. As soon as I get those estimates, I'll bring it to the commission. You can decide if you'd like to have it reframed. If so, then it would immediately go to the framer, and then he would get it reframed. And then during that time, we'd figure out where we are going to have that hang.
Any questions or comments?
Questions?
The conservation was paid for for through insurance?
Yes, so this piece was actually one of the pieces that was insured by the city, luckily for us. And so all that came out of the budget was the deductible, which was $250.
Okay,
Okay?
thanks, Brittany. For sure. I think that's Brittany's also. This is for the presentations that are getting scheduled.
I did want to give you a quick update, though, on the creative bike racks that were damaged.
Oh, yes.
So just to give you a little update on that, so I was able to track down the insurance of the person who hit the bike racks and was able to file a claim. So I submitted all that information that was needed, and the payment has been processed. Betty Holm, who is the creator of the creative bike racks, she's going to be repairing them.
In
They're just
case
the
you
one.
all don't know, a car bumped into the red one, and actually looks like almost broke it off, or bent it at least.
Yes,
Bent it.
it's quite bent.
One of the,
How does that
Yeah.
even happen?
all right, so this is for us as we're doing presentations to the various groups. We have one scheduled for Monday at noon, and Joe is going to come. And then I'll do the presentation. So, and I'm working on getting a couple of others scheduled yet. So trying to track people down is the most difficult part of all of this. And then I did also sit down and visit with one of the individuals from the Fargo Inc. publication group. So that's Design and Living, Fargo Monthly. There's about three or four of them in that group. So, and then we're done with the Forum Editorial Board, HPR. Yeah. And there's one more in there too. I can't remember it. So, thank you so much for doing this. It's colorful.
Yeah.
If you have any feedback, just let me know.
Okay.
Could I be added to the member list?
I'm sorry?
Could I be added to the member list?
Oh,
Are you not?
Commission members. Oh, yeah, we got it.
Oops. No big deal.
You certainly can. I will take care of that tomorrow.
oh, yeah, Michael Olson.
I
is
apologize.
Still on
No
there.
worries.
Good, thanks for pointing that out. All right, so the work plan, which is the last page of of our handouts. Nicole, you want to walk us through that?
So basically, this is just an electronic version of what you saw from the photograph of the cards that got moved around. And so, kind of listed from top to bottom per category as well, based on the priorities on how you ranked them. And that's pretty much all I have to say. So it's just kind of a working document, and as some of the like under outreach, where you had combined 3 of the cards because they were kind of similar in nature. We just right now plugged all 3 in that same box, and I think the next step was we're going to start figuring out resource needs and action plan items per those topics. The staff loved hearing the conversation at kind of listening into the conversation you were having last month on. As people, I could start to see how people were starting to figure out how they could contribute, or what they had interest in, or what they wanted to be part of. And so I think Arlette and I have been kind of brainstorming on different ways to kind of start tackling those next steps, whether it's through a, at month by month, having that discussion at a commission meeting. For instance, how can staff best support those activities as you envision them? And so, for instance, conducting community listening sessions, those could be many different kinds of things. So listening to how you envision them, or what you think those want to be, and then staff can kind of do those logistics if you need them, or if, kind of committee or task forces start to gel as part of this work as well. So we're pretty open to where you want to go next, and just we're excited that we're this far along.
So what we were talking about was possibly taking, and if we go back to the priorities, maybe taking outreach, since that was the top priority, or one of the two, that we take that in December and dig deep and actually come up with, so as volunteer commission members, this is what we could do on that piece, and what pieces would need to be done by staff, and how would we approach the whole thing, that kind of thing. And then January, take probably the next priority, and then the following month, probably do the other three or something, so we get it done early in 2019 and not drag too far into the year with it. That sound like a reasonable approach?
I like it.
Okay. We'll have a couple of working meetings. The performing arts, any more questions or comments about that? Okay. The Performing Arts Center, Commissioner Strand was real diligent about trying to get us representation on the task force. So I went to the first, actually it was the second meeting, but the first meeting for me, week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It's revived itself and pretty strongly. The group that is on this task force, representatives from, Charlie Johnson from CVB, Rob Sobolik from the Dome and the Civic Center, I believe he's also managing. And then Linda Boyd from the Symphony. Mike Redlinger is kind of the staff person there. Who am I missing?
City commissioners? Any commissioners?
Well, Dave Papcorn is the chair, and John is also on it. He wasn't there at the last meeting. There's one individual that the guy that just retired from the school district.
Oh,
Jeff.
Jim Johnson. No.
No, Schatz.
Schatz. Yeah. Dr.
What's his
Schatz.
first name?
Yeah.
Jeff Schatz. So that's the makeup, and they are really moving forward with the planning process. Obviously, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but they are going down the path of getting a consultant to do a more developed site plan. The first study, which was done back in 2015, was more of a feasibility study for a performing arts center. And when you read through that, I mean, to me, when you look at comparable cities, it should be a very doable project here. So the next step is really to try to define better what that site plan would be, and then also put some a little more solid dollar figure to the cost of actually having a center. And then the third part would be feasibility fundraising study. So, yeah, I mean,
Have they chose the site?
yes, right here. Yeah. In fact, that was a little bit of a discussion inside the group, and I don't know what the discussion was in between the feasibility study, which actually looked at about 4 or 5 sites, I believe. I shouldn't say they've decided on a site, but they are moving forward with the site plan on this site. But there was discussion as to whether they wanted to go back and revisit all those, well, at least a couple of those sites. But there was a real strong feeling inside the group. No, if we're going to move forward, we need to move forward with at least a site that we think we'd like to move forward with. So, yeah. So that's about all I have on that. Any questions? Any other business? And there's a public here, so if not, a motion to adjourn would be good.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I apologize, we went over a half hour. We usually don't do this, but quite a few
Well-
agenda items.